Hello and thanks for joining me. My name's Chris Ellison and I'm the marketing manager here at Westwood Motor Group in Wigan. And today I've got something extra special for you. I'd like to introduce you to the brand new Audi E-Tron, Audi's first fully electric luxury SUV. While many of the electric cars on the road today are visibly and intentionally different from the rest of the traffic, what Audi have done, however, is to go the other way and make their first foray into the luxury EV market look reassuringly familiar, perhaps hoping to tempt their usual customer base away from the traditional powered vehicles that they're used to driving around in. And I think if that's their strategy, they might be onto something. For all intents and purposes, being a little bit larger than the Q5 and slightly smaller than the Q7, with which it shares a chassis, Audi could well have called this the Q6 rather than the E-Tron. To look at, there's very little to distinguish the E-Tron from its petrol and diesel burning counterparts, subtly conveying the message that there's nothing really out of the ordinary with a car that's run on a battery. Sure, it's electric, but we're not going to shout about it. It's a big Audi, it's a luxury car, it's a beautiful design, it has real presence on the road. These are the first impressions. The fact that it runs on a bottle full of lightning, almost not worth mentioning. What we have here then is a car that's designed for a mainstream audience, but as it's an Audi, mainstream is still a little bit special. So let's take a look around. Throughout the E-Tron, there are a number of really nice pieces of design, and I'm going to go through just a few of my favourites. The first of which is the way the flap covering the charging ports work. Rather than a simple hinged arrangement, a touch of these semi-hidden buttons makes the flap neatly move down to reveal the charging ports beneath. If you were listening carefully, you'll have noticed I said flaps, plural, and that's because there's one on the other side. 2 taps on the key fob opens up the cavernous boot, which you might have a hard time filling. However, if you do happen to go a little bit overboard on your next time at Waitrose, then you can simply tip the split fold rear seats forwards and make even more room. Naturally, Audi don't expect you to walk all the way around to the side of the car to drop the seats forwards. So instead, they've put a convenient little handle here and here to drop the seats back for you. If you need that much space though, you might be better off with a van. In case you didn't know, here at Westwood, we have a dizzying selection of commercial vehicles available for hire at competitive rates, which are discounted further for our existing customers. Get in touch for details. Under the floor of the E-Tron, there's a large compartment which provides useful out-of-sight storage space, and while the charging cables have a compartment of their own under the bonnet, you might choose to keep the charging kit here instead, whichever is the most convenient for you. The cabin of the E-Tron is amongst the best in its class. There's a tasteful combination of subtly contrasting colours and materials, which along with the distinctively geometric design of the dash, add to the premium feel of the car. If there was a bingo card of boxes to tick to make a premium cabin, the E-Tron would get a full house, with electric folding mirrors, multi-directional adjustable seats with memory function, multiple screens, adaptive air suspension, selectable driving modes, dual zone climate control, and all kinds of technological fanciness by the bucket load. The fact that it has pretty much anything that you could ask for isn't really all that surprising. It's the brilliant way all this tech has been implemented, which is what's really worth paying attention to. Case in point, there are 3 big crisp clear screens surrounding the driver, and Audi's sensational virtual cockpit system never fails to impress. The screen in the dash provides all the driver information and instrumentation, and the 2 here in the middle are touchscreens. So far so good, but this is hardly unique in the luxury car sector. Audi, however, knowing as they do the value of build quality, precision, and a button that has just the right amount of clickiness, have found a way to put that into their touchscreens. Touch a button on the screen and you get a brief vibration of haptic feedback and a gentle but precise clicking sound, which all combine together to mimic the feel of a real button, even though it's just a screen. It's subtle, but it's immensely satisfying, and just goes to show that great design doesn't need to shout. Sometimes a whisper is louder. Further down the dash, there's another great piece of design. This slightly offset lateral handle serves as a rest for your hand, which makes it easier to operate the surrounding controls. And I might be showing my age a little here, but some of you might remember a 1980s film called The Last Starfighter. This grip really puts me in mind of one of the scenes in that film. The part where the main protagonist is being shown around the weapon systems in the cockpit of his titular starfighter. Here at my fingertips are a variety of controls, most importantly the start and stop button here, and this satisfyingly chunky rocker switch which selects forwards and reverse driving modes. Hitting the start button simultaneously lights up the whole dashboard, moves the driver's seat into your preferred position, while also playing a nice little welcome tone just to let you know that the ignition's switched on. Nice. If I could replace that gentle piano with a voice that said, "Greetings, Starfighter," I definitely would. Tucked in between the seats there's an array of sockets. There's a SIM card, SD card, couple of USB ports, a 12 volt socket, and there's a sliding cover here which opens up to reveal either a little binnacle or a pair of cup holders depending on how you have it set up. The central armrest opens up and there's a useful bit of space there, and also there's a little hole that you can't see that passes through and comes out here just above the USB sockets, so you could hide your phone or your device in there, pass a wire through and charge them while they remain safely out of sight. Rear seat passengers aren't going to want for space either. There's acres of room in here, both above my head. There's plenty of knee room. I don't particularly need it, but if I was significantly taller than I am, I wouldn't be getting cramped in here. And if all the seats aren't occupied, there's a central armrest here that's large enough so that both rear passengers aren't going to be fighting over it. There's also a hidden space underneath which has got a bit of a furry lining on there so you can keep things out of sight, and also if you put your phone screen down it's probably not going to get scratched in transit. Down here there's a couple of air vents for the air conditioning system, and there's an additional 12 volt socket there, so no chance of running out of battery en route. For all the luxuries in the cabin, the E-Tron is primarily going to be judged by what it's like to drive. On the road, one of the most striking features of the E-Tron is the noise, or rather the lack of noise. Even driving at speed, the near silence is deafening. There's absolutely no wind noise permeating the cabin. I can hear a little road noise from the tyres and a barely perceptible hum from the motors, and that's it. I'm driving through leafy Cheshire at the moment and I'm approaching some horses. And the important thing to remember here is that the horses can't hear me coming, nor can the riders. I must be patient. Thank you.
Thank you, darling.
No worries. Thank you. Even at motorway speed, there's less noise in the cabin than my car has sat at traffic lights idling. Cruising along, the ride quality is just sublime. It soaks up the bumps and the undulations in the road as if they're not there. Exactly what you want in a big luxury family SUV. Okay, I found a road with a 60 mph limit, and let's see just how fast we can get to that 60 mph from a standing start. Okay, 3, 2, 1, and go. And there we go. That's it. I will never get tired of that acceleration. It's absolutely insane. Let's be clear, this isn't a sports car. It's not designed to be a sports car. It's not made to be a sports car. It's not expected to perform like a sports car. But when you drop your foot for the first time in this, be prepared for a turn of speed that will blow you away. This is 2.5 tons of car. Something this big shouldn't be able to get to that speed so quickly without making a noise. I wouldn't be at all surprised if I get a knock on the door tomorrow and it's the police arresting me on suspicion of breaking the laws of physics. That's what it feels like. And you know what? Just like the E-Tron, I'll go quietly. As well as the speed and the quality of drive, there are some other little subtleties that are just built into the E-Tron that you really only notice when you're driving it. For instance, if I happen to lean slightly towards lines on the road, the steering wheel will just lean away again. It's just trying to help me keep within the lines, but it's not overt about it. It's just a little subtle nudge saying, maybe move that way a bit, or maybe move that way a bit. It's an incredible thing. While I've got you, let's address the elephant in the room, and that's the slightly knotty issue of range. While it's true that electric cars typically have a much shorter range before they need to be, inverted commas, refueled than your typical petrol or diesel cars, that isn't quite the problem that you might think it is. Here's why. Consider the E-Tron. On paper, it's got a range of close to 250 miles, and the stats suggest that in the real world, you might get close to that. Even so, 250 miles is a lot shorter than the range in a typical petrol or diesel powered car. However, have you considered how you use your car? Most of the cars and vans on our contract hire fleet do fewer than 10,000 miles in a year. So if you do the maths and work that out on a weekly basis, assuming that you're one of our typical contract hire users, 250 miles is roughly a week's worth of use. Would putting your car on charge once a week be an onerous task? Obviously you can't recharge an electric powered car as fast as you could refuel a petrol or diesel one. Again, not a problem, because unlike a petrol or diesel powered car, you can charge this up at home. All you need is a period of a few hours where your car's sat on your drive doing nothing, while you're asleep, for instance. But what if you don't have a drive? Maybe, like me, you live in a terrace house and you have to park right outside your own front door. And let me tell you why that's not a problem. The whole purpose of having a car is to go from point A to point B. Now, if you think about all those point Bs that you go to during the week and leave your car for maybe an hour or two at a pinch, how many of those places have got their own fast charging points where you can simply leave your car while you're off doing whatever it is you're doing and come back and you've got a little bit more electricity in the battery? Maybe it's the supermarket, maybe it's the gym, maybe the shopping centre. Keep an eye out, because one other thing that you'll notice about those charging points is that they typically occupy amongst the best spaces in the whole car park. Near the entrance, conveniently located, away from people opening their door into your car or hitting it with a stray trolley. And you know what else you'll notice about them? They're empty. That's right, the best space in the whole car park reserved just for you and your electric car. For a 2.5 ton car, the E-Tron handles fantastically well around corners and roundabouts. It disguises its weight magnificently. Of course, it's a big family SUV, but it hides that so well. There's barely any roll, and it inspires absolute confidence while you're driving it. The steering's light, it's manageable, it's responsive, and if it weren't for the lack of noise from the engine that it doesn't have, you'd be completely forgiven for thinking that this is just a regular car. Fine, it runs on lightning rather than petrol or diesel, but otherwise, the driving experience should be reassuringly normal. Obviously it's an Audi, so ordinary means big, luxurious, opulent, and a little bit quick. But otherwise, it's ordinary. In a good way. Okay, end of the road for me, maybe the start of the road for you. I'm back at Westwood, and this car could be yours. So there you have it, the Audi E-Tron. A big luxury SUV from Audi that looks, feels and drives exactly like a big luxury SUV from Audi should, and just so happens to run on electricity. Tesla and Jaguar might have shown us what's possible to be done with a luxury electric SUV, but what Audi have done differently is to show us that you can do all of that, but without being in your face with it. This puts this big electric Audi in a kind of sub-niche all of its own, and we think it's going to do incredibly well. Having said all that, it is still an electric car, and as such there are a few things to bear in mind which are definitely worth knowing, especially for business users or anyone living near a place which charges for congestion or emissions. Take London for example. If you live outside the M25 but work in central London, you'll already be painfully aware that you have to pay around £25 a day just for the privilege of getting to work and back. This is thanks to the congestion charge and the charge for entering the ultra-low emission zone. Being an electric car, the E-Tron is exempt from all of that. So at 5 days a week, 4 weeks a month, that's a saving of £600 over the course of the month. The savings don't stop there though. You might notice that on the street, in some areas, EVs park for free. Some of your favourite coffee shops, etc. offer free charging. Then there's the road tax. Then there's the extremely generous benefit-in-kind company car tax rate, which I understand has now gone from 16% to 0. If you do your sums, you could well find out that the E-Tron saves you even more money than it actually costs to hire from us. Even if you don't live in the capital, be aware that low emission zones are fairly common in cities across Europe, and there are plans afoot for more of them over here. Manchester and Birmingham in particular are being earmarked for low emission zones and congestion charges, so it's worth bearing in mind, and it's also worth considering that the E-Tron is likely to be exempt from all of them. Here at Westwood we have Audi E-Trons here you can drive away right now. You can hire them on flexible rental, 12-month hire, flexible hire or contract hire, whichever suits you best. As ever, we provide prices on a whole range of options for far less than you'll find anywhere else. In fact, we challenge you to rent for less. If you want to be one of the very first people to drive one of these fantastic luxury electric SUVs, then get in touch with us today, cut your costs and improve your image with Westwood Motor Group here in Wigan. Thanks very much for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe and share to stay right up to date with all the new vehicles that we have here at Westwood. And if there are any cars or vans that you'd like to see a tour of, then don't forget you can leave your feedback in the box below. Once again, thanks very much for watching. My name has been Chris Ellison, and I will see you next time. Take care till then.